Great. So it was a great beginning. Sorry for in between glitches with the internet connection, but nevertheless, it was a very informative talk and a start to this one-day symposium. So now we have the next speaker, Professor Tuli Day. Professor Day, she has earned her doctorate degree from IIT Kharagpur and the postdoctoral experience from Frederick Alexander University. Presently, Dr. Day is associated with Institute of Bioinformatics and Biotechnology, Savitribai Phule, Pune University. Earlier, it used to be known as Pune University, as a UGC FRP assistant professor. Her research interest is in tumor modeling to understand the tumor behavior and cancer biology with specific focus on cellular migration, nano and biomaterial interaction. Dr. Day has over 22 research publications, 2 book chapters to her credential. It is really a pleasure to have Dr. Day with us today. She'll be shedding more light on 3D culture with her talk now, which is entitled as 3D cell culture, adding another dimension to cell culture. Dr. Day, over to you. Thank you so much for joining this webinar.
Am I audible and
Yes, you are
visible as
audible.
well?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll share the screen. Just a moment. Okay. So the screen is visible now, I hope.
Yes, screen is also visible.
Okay. So to start with, I want to thank the organizer for calling me and giving me this opportunity to talk about our research, which is mostly on three-dimensional cell culture. As I have seen, like my previous talk speaker, he explained the 3D system in a very beautiful way, and how we can have different kind of 3D system that we need to work with, and how it is better compared to our normal conventional 2D culture. And I think most of the participants, they have some idea about like why we need to do the 3D culture and how it looks and all these things. So I will not go very detail about describing the 3D culture, but I will just try to say that when we have a problem, then let's say in our case, we will talk about mostly the cancer. So when we have a problem such as a disease, and we need to model that disease, we need to study that disease, how this three-dimensional culture can be useful, and how using a simple setup or using very basic infrastructure, you can create those structure, you can study them, and you can get many insight about the cell behavior, about the behavior of tumor and all these things. And you do not need very high quality infrastructure or high quality instrumentations to begin with. So I would like to start with my talk that is titled as adding another dimension to the cell culture. So as I think whoever is attending the program, they knew that the cell culture we generally do mostly in petri plate, we do it in animal cell culture in petri plate, in flask. So there we have this 2 dimension, that width and breadth, that is the X and Y. And if we want to know about more, then we need to add that Z, or that is the 3rd dimension that we will talk about now. So as my work, we mostly concentrate on cancer. So we will see that how we will identify a problem, and then how we can use this technique of this 3D cell culture to address that problem, and what will be our outcome, or what will be our interpretation from those data. And then finally, we will see that whether the 3D system is helping us to gain more knowledge, or it is as similar as our 2D culture. So to start with the question that we want to ask, that we need to see that what is the problem, like currently what is the problem that we have. If we look into the, because we are working mostly on cancer, so I will prefer to jump into the statistics a bit first, and we will see that what is the current scenario. As we can see, this is the data from Globocan 2018. So they are giving a worldwide map, and we can see that what is the rate of cancer-related deaths. So we can see that the cancer-related death is mostly in the first world countries, or in Mexico or Argentina or Australia or certain part of your Europe. It is the first cause of death, which is closely followed by the South America, certain part of Africa, and China and Russia, which is the second cause of death. In India, as we can see, the color coding is happening here. So India, cancer is not yet the first cause of death, but the cancer is coming very quickly into the towards the top position. It is now approximately 5th to 10th reason of death that we are having. If we look into the systemic distribution of what kind of cancers we are having actually in India or throughout the world, we have seen from that data that in case of males, the prostate cancer is the first killing reason. And then we have in India, we have oral cancer, which is the most important one. In case of female, we have seen that breast cancer throughout the world is one of the main cause of death for cancer-related deaths. And how the cancer-related deaths are occurring, it is mostly assumed that people are dying because of metastasis. That is, the cancer is spreading in other organs. So these are the questions that we have, and then we see that as you can see, I wrote two things here, that is the death of cancer and the economics of cancer. So as we can see that the cancer is a widespread disease, it can cause many deaths. It is a very good economic industry as well. You will see that in cancer, the tumor profiling or the cancer diagnostic market is valued at 8.3 billion, and the cancer therapeutic market is valued at 98.9 billion. Okay, so that is that value, that data coming from 2018. So we can see that right now the values is not going to go down, it is going to be up. And we can have a huge market in that sense, or huge what we can call that huge economy in that sense, that is a cancer is becoming an industry. If you look into that anti-cancer drugs market, you can see that the breast cancer is topping the chart. It is having a market value of 25,000 million US dollar, with a compound annual growth rate of 7.4. So this is predicted value, and it is not going to be down because the cancer cases are rising because of our lifestyle, because of we are doing more mammography, we are doing more detection, and we are also becoming more health aware. So these numbers are not going to down, and this drugs market is also not going to be down. So when we are talking about the market, or when we are talking about the new identification of new targets or identification of new therapeutics, what is this? What is the protocol that we need to follow? Like if we want to discover new drugs. So this is a simple way of like flowchart that we can describe the protocol, that you have to identify the drug first. That drug molecule, you can do it in silico, you can identify the candidate, or you can identify different kind of assays that can be used to validate that candidate. You can identify certain lead molecules from all the competitors, and then you can identify that whether these lead molecules are optimized or not. Then will come the preclinical studies, where you are going to actually use this lead molecule in a lab setup. And then you do in vitro study, in vivo study, and ex vivo study to identify the efficacy of that molecule. You also have to do the administration, distribution, metabolism, and excretion of those molecules in a system. You need to prove that, like let's say you say that I am going to work on X molecule, then you have to prove that this X molecule is binding to its target, it is stopping the target or activating the target, whichever it is supposed to do. You need to identify which delivery route you are going to be used, whether it has to be oral or through skin or through intravenous. You need to identify the optimize the formula and the bioavailability of those drugs. Then we are going to jump into the clinical study, and where you have the phase 1 with healthy volunteer, phase 2 and 3 with patient volunteer, And then you are going to consider the single dose or multiple dose you need to do. You have to study the efficacy and the safety through the healthy volunteer and study the pharmacokinetic. If this goes successfully, then you are going to be approved by different agencies such as FDA we have, then you are going to be registered your drug and your drug will be in market. Even if the drug is in market, the work is not done there, then the company has to follow the post-treatment effect, whether there is any adverse effect, some other side effect, and all other things. And you can see the whole system is not a child's play. You can see the drug discovery to preclinical study. You can have 4 to 8 years. Only in clinical study, you can have 5 to 7 years, and the review is only going to take 1 to 2 years. So the whole system might take 10 to 12 years to come out with a successful drug, assuming that all these things have worked properly and everything clicked after another. The glitch is here that it is not that smooth, and many drugs, they actually fail at clinical trial, that is your first or second clinical stage. So if we look into it, that what is the percentage of the drug discovery that is happening. So you have like, if we look into that anti-cancer drug development, it is approximately the 40% of total drug delivery or total drug discovery that is happening throughout the world. So if we look, this is the third, if we see that this is the total anti-cancer drugs, that is like 3735, this is the number, and it is the 73% of the total drug that is being discovered at any time point. So among them, phase 1, we generally have the 45% of the drug. In phase 2, you have 53%. Phase 3, the earlier and the later on, you see the number is going down drastically. So you can see that in any of this stage, the chance of failure is becoming very high. And if we go back and see, that is the phase 1 is you start with your human volunteer, phase 2 and 3, you are working with a patient volunteer. So you can see that the glitch is the main failure that is happening is mostly in the phase 1 and the phase 2. And the responsibility lies at the previous, that is your in vitro, in vivo, and the ex vivo assays. So whatever the candidates that we are getting from here, they are getting failed at this point, and they are not getting successful at this point. So we need to look into in this group, that is the preclinical study, and find out where we are stuck. And you can ask that what is the, like, why we need to look into it, what is the point of why we have to thought about it. If it is failed, then it's failed, we don't have to worry about it. But then obviously we have to worry, because most of this cost that is being beared by these R&D companies are coming from taxpayers money, different NGOs. Okay, they are also putting their money, but that their money is not that they are doing it for their own profit. If you see that this is, if this is the success rate, like the success rate of your anti-cancer drug getting approved by end of the day is approximately 3% or less than that. So this huge failure rate, that is your 96 to 97% failure rate, actually skyrocket the cost of your treatment. Okay, so there is a data from, that is from Prasad et al. In clinical oncology. They've seen that in countries such as United States, where they do not have any universal Medicare, the cost of 1 month treatment with any one of these breast cancer treatment drug, you can see it is coming from approximately $4,000 to $12,000 per month, when the average salary is approximately $4,000. In other countries such as Norway, where they have a universal Medicare, then again you can see that the cost is going down approximately $500 per month to maximum $5,000. Here also the average income is approximately $4,000. So you can see, if the countries, first world countries such as Norway and United States, they are facing such problem, you can imagine what is happening to economically developing countries such as India, China, Brazil, Bangladesh, and all other our neighbors. So here the anti-cancer drugs are unapproachable, they are skyrocketing, and in most cases they are unaffordable to the patient or the family. So cancer is not killing the patient, it is also killing the family financially, as well as you can say morally. So from when in this discussion, we understood that the problem lies that whether the pipeline is faulty or not. Okay. So we need to see that we need to rethink the existing pipeline, and maybe we need to tweak it, or maybe we need to retune it to understand where the fault lies, and then we can maybe then improve the success rate. So what is this, what are the stage that we have this pipeline which actually work in an experimental lab? That is the cell culture, that is your 2D cell culture, where you are growing your cells in a petri plate or in a culture flask. So this is very easy model, you can see, and then it is also very cost effective. But the problem is that you cannot mimic the tumor here. You cannot see a three-dimensional structure in the system. You cannot create a tumor microenvironment. You cannot understand the effect of other cells that we now know that tumor is not only made up of a tumorigenic cell. You can also have other stromal cells also. It is structurally, pathophysiologically, it will not resemble the tumor. And as well as you cannot see any complex interactions between the cell. So you can understand that this system, though it is very easy to do, it's not at all adapted to solve any problem right now. So then people who work with mouse, they will be saying that yes, mouse is the answer, or the animal models are the answer, because they can mimic your in vivo system. The tumor microenvironment can be studied in very well, and you can simply mimic your disease in the mouse. Okay. But there are also some problems, such as it is very highly expensive. Nobody, like in India also, very few lab can access the mouse system, very few lab can afford the mouse system. And then you need obviously many expertise and infrastructure. The life span of mouse is quite, like, it's very small compared to a human, because in human the cancers are mostly having at the later stage of their life. And then you can also have the progression of cancer may take like 3 to 5 years, which is you cannot study in a mouse system. Tumor growth and development cannot be studied here. And you have as well know that in mouse you cannot put the, like, you cannot work with mouse cancer cell line, because then it is completely non-human relevant. So then you have to put the mouse cancer cell line, and then if you put the mouse cancer cell line in a mouse, sorry, human cancer cell line in a mouse, the mouse is tends to reject them because of the immune system. So what we need to do, we need to strip off the whole immune system from the mouse to allow our cancer cells to grow. So that is another pitfall, because when you stripped off the whole immune system, the mouse cannot fight back, the immune system cannot fight back, and whatever data you are getting, it is actually you are getting false positive. Because in human system you have a functional immune system, and then it will fight with the cancer all the time. And then you cannot compare the mouse system and the human system from the point of stripped immune complexes. So we can see that these two may be the point of problem, or maybe we need to rethink on this. So what could be our problem? So we need to establish new paradigm and new avenue we need to find out. So cancer is a very clever disease. It always multiple steps ahead of us. If you treat cancer with certain one disease, it will always have a network, hundreds of pathways to choose from, and it will always divert and diversify, and then it will change the way it work, and then we have a cancer resistance drug, or we have some problem again. So we need to revise our existing paradigm of treating cancer, and we need to create the better model to understand it. So it is the crux of that story, that if we need to beat cancer, we have to think like cancer. We have to understand the disease in more detail, not simply growing a cell on a two-dimensional environment and we think that it will mimic the cancer. So here comes the story of the 3D or the three-dimensional, or adding that extra dimension to your study. So now you can see that why we need the 3D, because it always add depth perception, resolution. As you can see, it always adds some more information as well as entertainment too. But most importantly, all our tissues, organs, and tumors are 3D in nature. As you can see, this is a fibroid structure. So this is a three-dimensional structure which cannot be mimicked by a two-dimensional basic cell culture setup. So we need to understand the tumor, and we need to see, and we need to look into new paradigm, and we need to move towards the next dimension, that is your three-dimensional culture. So three-dimensional, if you can use the three-dimensional model, you can create 3D tumor models. These are the three basic systems that you can use. You can use a scaffold-based model where you have a natural or synthetic material, and then you can create a scaffold and grow your cell on top of it. And then you can may have a tumor-like structure. You can have a scaffold pre-model where you let the cells come together, and then you can let them aggregate and understand how they are interacting. You can also have a hybrid technology where you can use these two systems, like you are having an encapsulator or a scaffold structure, and then you are putting your aggregate cell structure into it, and then you can study the tumors. If we look into it, our personal favorite or our lab that we are working with, we are biased towards spheroid because it is very easy, and we just love the spheroid, to work with spheroid. Why we love this? Because it is a very similar mimicry to your tumor, and you can see that the spheroids, they have a necrotic zone, they have a proliferating zone on the surface. You can see that oxygen gradient can be mimicking your tumor structure. You can see glucose distribution is mimicking lactate accumulation, as well as your DNA breaks also mimic the way one three-dimensional tumor should work. It is cost effective. You do not need any extra infrastructure. You do not need any extra structure or matrix. The pathophysiology is completely very close. You can use different types of solid cancer cells to create your spheroids. You can use multiple cell types to understand like how they are interacting. You can prepare them from patient tissue, and you can use them also in microfluidic setup. So in our lab, we have these three basic work that we are going into, that we have these three different cell lines. We have breast cancer carcinoma, that is in non-invasive MCF. We have invasive MD8 MB231, and we have HT1080, which is a fibrosarcoma. And we created the spheroids using a basement membrane matrix. And this is the tumor that you can see. This is only cellular aggregate and nothing is inside that. So if you look through them through a scanning electron microscopy, you see that they are so close, and they are so, like, it looks like that the cells are fused together. Obviously they are not fused together, but they became so much aggregate together, and they are sharing so many interactions together that they look like a normal tissue. And if we see what is happening inside, we did a confocal microscopy with nucleus and actin staining. You can see the cells are indeed, they are separate from each other. The nucleus are separate, the actin filaments, you can see the actin cortex, you can see, and they are attached with each other, but they are maintaining their cellular entity, and they are creating a three-dimensional structure. Okay, so I am seeing that the participants are raising hands. So am I supposed to answer or see their questions, or we are going to take the question answer at the end?
We can have question answer at the end. You can continue, and I'll narrate the question. You can answer them.
Okay, fine. Nice. So we in our lab, we are trying to study all these things. It looks like we are trying to catch as many as things that we can, but you can see that if you can create a tumor in your lab, you will be also tempted to study everything that you can do. You want to study tumor heterogeneity, tumorigenesis, angiogenesis, tumor metabolism, drug resistance, all these things you can study. And currently we are concentrating mostly on the metastasis and the tumor immunocrosstalk. So right now we have completed 1/3 of our study, that we understood that what are the problems there, and why we need to move on to different dimension, and why we need to study in a different way. And from now on, I'm going to talk about what we are doing in our lab. So our next part of my presentation will be how we are studying the metastasis, followed by how we are going to study the tumor immunocrosstalk in using these spheroids. So to start with, we are going to be talking about the metastasis now. So what is the metastasis? Just to give a brief idea. It is a term, so it is used to describe the spread of cancer cells from the primary tumor to surrounding tissues and to distant organ. Cancer cells generally use different modality of migration, such as mesenchymal migration, amoeboidal migration, collective migration. and they have the very high chance of converting one to another, like they have a epithelial or collective to mesenchymal transition, they can have mesenchymal to amoeboidal transition, so they have always this kind of transition going on. Also, we find out that the cancer cells can use other stromal cells such as macrophage, such as fibroblast to facilitate their migration. To make this story more complex, scientists are coming up with different types of migration that you can see. So here you can see this is a data from Friedel and Alexander, that they can have amoeboid migration, mesenchymal migration. So these are mostly individual type cell, like single cell type of migration. You can have multi-cell type of migration, that is your amoeboidal multicellular, mesenchymal multicellular. Then you can have a cluster migration. You can, the cells, the tumors can create solid strand, they can create strand with lumen, they can create strand with profusive structure, and they can also create, that is the growth or growth related proliferations, or the, so you can see all of these tumor, all of this migration modality can be utilized by all kind of solid tumors. And you can see the cell cell junction play an important role here, along with your different cytoskeleton proteins. So we want to study that whether in our system or in our spheroid, we can use it as a platform to study metastasis, because we have to remember that the spheroid related culture were quite old. People from 1970s are trying to use these spheroids, and they barely scratch the surface, because they mostly use the spheroid to study the drug resistance or the radiotherapy, the efficacy of the radiotherapy. They never think of using the spheroid as a tumor model or as a tumor to understand the tumor behavior. So in that way, we are in pioneer in that system in India, as well as like few other labs in international setup. So where we are now using the spheroids to understand the tumor behavior rather than using it as a simple tool. So this is the work where we have studied that the multicellular spheroid can be used as a new platform to study metastasis. And to study or to validate that, we did some experiment. So we use these three different cell line that I have told you about, that we have MCF 231 and HT1080. So these are different types of cells. They are mostly epithelial cell, and this is a fibroblast, and they have different migration speed, or like the way the speed they migrate from one space to another. So when we did study them in 2D structure, we find out that this is, we know as a non-invasive breast cancer cells, and this is invasive breast cancer cells. So we found out that they have no significant difference in terms of migration speed in a 2D environment. So the invasive and non-invasive characterization is not quite clear in if you are using a 2D environment. Then we used different inhibitor to study that what kind of migration modality they are using in a 2D environment. So we use cytocollagen B, which actually inhibit the actin polymerization. We use blebstatin, which actually inhibit the myosin. We use Mariasmart, which inhibit the MMP. So we find out that those cytocollagen B inhibit all the cell migration. Blebstatin and Mariasmart barely inhibit only the MCF, and it has no effect on HT, as well as very minimal effect on MDA-MB231. So you can see that 2D, in 2D environment, the most important migration that is happening, it is epithelial. It is not happening to amoeboidal or through mesenchymal way. But then what we did, we use this spheroid, and then we use a invasion matrix that is provided by the company. And we use the invasion matrix, and then we see what is happening if we use a chemotactic migration here, that is the chemoattractant laminin. We find out that because MCF7, it is known to be a non-invasive cell, it is not migrating at all in the 3D. Whereas MDA231 and HT, they are migrating profusely. You can see the cells outside the spheroid structure. So it shows that in 3D, the inherent nature of the cells, that whether they are invasive or non-invasive, it can be popped out in a very beautiful way. Then we use different inhibitors and find out that MDA-MB231 is only getting inhibited by cytocollagen and Mariasmart. So we can see that they here the actin cytoskeleton and the MMPs are playing an important role. However, in case of HT, we are only cytocollagen can be inhibiting, not blebstatin as well as Maria Smart. So you can see that the actin filament is very important for any kind of migration. However, blebstatin and Maria Smart can be bypassed in case of invasive cancer cells. Then we want to see that whether this the intracellular structure or focal adhesion complexes that is very important in case of migration in 2D, whether they're playing the same role in 3D also. So we did some mRNA profiling with some protein such as P130Cas, thalin, vinculin, paxillin, and FAK. And we find out that though they are very highly expressed in 2D, they are very minimally expressed in 3D structure. So we can say that these molecules or these proteins, they are very important in 2D. They, if you inhibit one of them, the cell will stop migrate, but you can see that their expression level is quite low in 3D. So we might say that their importance or their role actually in 3D is quite different compared to your 2D culture. So we can, from here we can say that the 3D is behaving, the cells in 3D, they behave compared to their 2D counterpart, and the 3D structure can be used as a valid platform for metastasis related studies. So then in the next experiment, what we did, because we know that the tumors are constantly under stress. If you try to grow a tumor inside any one of your organs, they will be having nutrient scarcity, they will have a scarcity of the space. So they are getting stressed in many ways. So those stress, people are now trying to understand that whether those stress are actually making the tumors more metastatic, or if you let the tumor have everything that is it is looking for, maybe it will not become metastatic. So we want to study that if we create a tumor which is a metabolically challenged environment, or we give it no food, okay, then how it will behave, like whether it will become more aggressive or it will become more dormant, what it will do. So we did that experiment, and then we find out that if you grow this tumor in different kind of environments, such as you can see here, this H is like we are having a certain concentration of glucose, you are, this 5 depends that we are certain concentration of serum, and then in hypoxia that we are taking out the oxygen. So in 3 field, like we are removing the foods in terms of we are removing the glucose, we are removing the serum or the protein, and we are removing the oxygen. So then we want to see that if you treat your spheroids with these different kinds of stress environment, and then we create different level of stress, that we are having mild stress, then we are having high stress, and then extreme stress, different kind of combination we did. And then we want to study how it will impact the tumor behavior. So we created those tumors and then stressed them, and then we rescue them with normal media, and then we let them grow, or let them like free flow migration, we let them migrate. And then we find out that the tumors who are having minimal stress, they prefer to grow in a, or to migrate in a collective migration or the epithelial migration, which is the nature of this MCF7 cell. But if we stress them in a very high like very high stress, like you are completely taking out the serum, or we are completely taking out serum, giving them very low glucose and hypoxia, the tumors become dormant, they never migrate anymore, even if you give them new food or rescue them. Then we find out that if you give them low glucose and no serum at all, they prefer to migrate in a single cell mode, which is very unique for this kind of cell type. And then we find out that if we give them the stress conditions, which is now getting into a little bit more stress. So because you can see here, this is a single type of stress, and here you are seeing the multiple type of stress are coming together. You can see they choose to have different types of modality, that is they are having collective migration as well as single cell migration too. So from this we can confirm that if you change your environment, if you change or if you give different kind of stress to your tumor, they choose to behave differently, they choose to opt for different kind of migration modality. And if we remember, if we go back a little bit, that you can see that they can now choose that whether they want to have single type of cellular migration or collective type of cellular migration, or they want to have both to solve the stress problem. And in further experiment, we also find out that the single cell type, that is the single cell migration that is happening, it is mostly of amoeboidal type, not of mesenchymal type. So this is another interesting thing. And you can also see that the tumors are going into dormancy. So this is another way of studying that what is happening to the tumor and whether we can starve the tumor to its death. Interestingly, we found another kind of new thing, that if you treat your tumor, which is a non-invasive type, with a huge stress or with a like high kind of or extreme kind of stress, morphologically they now starts to look like your invasive type of tumor. So you can see this is your MCF, and then if you increase the tumor stress, or if you increase the environmental stress with like removing one thing after one, you can see they are now becoming a completely what you can call irregular structure with ruffled boundary. They are no more this kind of beautiful circle or compact structure. They are now become more or less like loosely collected structure, and they look exactly like the M231 tumor that we grow. And if you increase the stress even more, you will find out that these tumors are not, that the cells are not coming together anymore, and then they remain separated from each other in a way that they are not forming the tumor. So you can see that you can control the nutrient environment, and then you can stop the tumorigenesis of this MCF7, which is very prone to spheroid formation. So this is another way we can study that how the stress or how the nutrient scarcity can actually control your tumorigenesis in vitro conditions. And then to understand that whether this kind of tumor structures, they actually shows any kind of like, they look like invasive one, but they behave like invasive one. So we did another study with invasive matrix, and then we find out that in control sample you can see this very distinct boundary you can see, but in stressed sample you see that they are losing the boundary and the cells are coming out. So if you increase the stress enough, and if the tumor form, then the tumor will become of invasive type. So in a way you can now predict, or you can now understand that what is the BMI or what is the nutrient availability in your body. They can actually control your tumor behavior, and they can actually control the fate of the tumor. So we further looked into that whether the tumor or the spheroid structure that we have prepared, whether they are really different from our normal structure, more like if we look into the molecular biology point of view. So we find out that this is your actin cytoskeleton staining, that we find out that in actin cytoskeleton point of view, they are not much different. They all produce this cortical actin, this beautiful ring that is you are seeing here. So you can see that they are not much different from your control sample. But so internally they look normal cells, but their behavior now altered. And then we looked into some cell adhesion molecules, and then we find out that though they come together and then they are individually, their morphology or their actin filament distribution or actin cytoskeleton distribution is not altered, their cell adhesion molecule is becoming changed, and that is why they are not coming together, and then they are not forming this tumor structure. And recently one paper has they proved confirmatorily that e-cadherin, which is we have find out that e-cadherin level is getting down. So they find out that e-cadherin play an important role in tumor formation, and if we remove the e-cadherin, then the tumor formation will hampered, as well as that we can see here that your e-cadherin level is going down and your tumorigenesis is also going down. But the e-cadherin, they play an important role in migration also. So in metastasis, how they behave, that we are need to find out. So these are the two things, these are the results that we find out from our last, like we have worked on this for last 3 to 4 years, and we find out that the spheroids can be a very good model for your metastasis or tumor metastasis in an in vitro system. And you can find out new molecules, or you can find out the new role of old molecules in terms of focal adhesion complex or actin filament or actin cytoskeleton distribution. So so this is the second part of my talk, where we talk about your the how we can use the tumor structure or spheroid structure. Now we are going to move into our next topic, that is your tumor Oh, sorry, we forgot here. So we have did one experiment as well. So we want to see that whether these tumors or whether these spheroids that we are creating, whether they can have any role on other cells also. So we created one migration assay where we have incorporated the tumor and then we grow some other cells, like here we have used some stem cells. So we find out that if you increase your stress, that your tumors are under more stress, you can see this is the red cells are the stem cells. So your stem cells will be incorporated in your tumor. In a normal tumor, you can see the incorporation is not happening, that the stem cells are on surrounding the tumor, but they are not entering the tumor. But in case of stress tumor, you can see that the red cells are incorporating, they get incorporated into the tumor structure. So it is another also way to study that how the tumor or the spheroid are actually calling other cells, letting them getting infiltrated and use them for different kind of purposes. So now we're going to move into your tumor immunocrosstalk, and then we will be closing my part. So tumor immunocrosstalk is another interesting thing where many people are working, and tumor evasion and immune suppression is very important to study different kind of immunocells such as macrophages, neutrophil, T cells, mast cells, they NK cells, they infiltrate the tumor and they then control the behavior of tumor, and also they control the behavior of your immune system. So here in our study, we are concentrating mostly on TAM. So the TAM or the tumor associated macrophages are the class of macrophages that getting incorporated into your tumor, and then it help the tumor to grow, and it is giving you a pro-tumor activity. So this crosstalk between this macrophage and the tumor, like what molecules are using, how they are talking with each other, it's really not known. Many people studied and then say that this kind of CCX2 cytochemokines may play an important role. But in clinical trial, again, they find out that this inhibitor of CCX2 is not doing anything and it is a complete failure. So again, we can see that if studying in vitro system or in studying mouse model is not translated enough. So no functional model actually exists to study the macrophage and tumor cell satisfactorily. And to make the matter more complex, there are different types of macrophages that we know now about. That preliminary, we used to think that we have two types of macrophages, that is the polarized M1 and M2. So M1 is pro-inflammatory, M2 is anti-inflammatory, which is a TAM. But now with recent data, people are finding out that it is not a binary actually model, but it is a spectrum where you can have different types of macrophages, you can grow them and they will behave differently. But to start with our experiment, we are not going to go into that spectrum model because it will be too complex for us to start. We just start with creating these two binary model, to start with simple one, that we have created M1 and M2, and then we are going to study how they're interacting with our spheroid. So we took the cell line, that is your U937. This is a myeloid leukemia monocyte cell line. And then we treated them and create active monocyte, active macrophages, M1 type of macrophages and M2 type of macrophages by known protocol, that is using LPS or IL-4. Then we want to study that how these macrophages are actually interacting with our tumor. So we did what? We did a recruitment potential of these macrophages. So we use these two different types of cells, we color them, and then we co-culture together, then they will to see that whether these macrophages are actually getting incorporated into the tumor structure. This is a profile of our spheroids of co-culture structure, and as you can see that among these four types, the M2 type of macrophages are getting involved into the tumor in a high efficacy, which is in line with previous data of other people, that they said that because the M2 is the tumor associated type, they are supposed to incorporate into the tumor in more efficiently. But then we ask the question, like in body you never see this kind of a thing, na? That your tumor cells and your macrophages are coming together and then they are not making the tumor is first there, and then they are recruiting the macrophages. So this kind of experiment, maybe they are easier to do, but they will not give you the actual story. So we did what? We developed one experiment where we call it as a delayed recruitment of macrophages, where we have this tumor or the spheroids at the bottom of the plate, and we create some barrier in between using collagen, and then we grow the macrophages of different types on top of that collagen layer, and then we let them come. Like it is here, we are putting them together, whether they want it or not. But here we are letting them, like, let's see which one of them will come and being called by the spheroid structure and come towards the tumor. So we find out very interestingly that in this case, though the monocytes, they migrate little bit and they come, the activated macrophages, they are the maximum cells that is coming towards the tumor. The M1 type is coming, but they are very less. And the M2 cells, they are also coming. Their migration potential is quite high. So we can see here that even if here we can see the M2 type is migrating more, the maximum activity is seen by the activated macrophage. So we think that yes, it may give you the right information that you do not need a polarized macrophage to do your experiment. You have to let them polarize the way they want by the tumor. So this is the one way we can study that how this time dependent calling or time dependent education of these macrophages can be done in an experimental setup without using any kind of microfluidics setup, which is very costly. And then we ask another questions like, if they're getting called by this tumor, is this calling a specific type of calling, or is this a like a universal calling, and they only respond. So we did one competitive migration where we mix these two types of cells. Like you can see here, activated macrophage monocyte, activated macrophage M1 macrophage, activated macrophage and M2 macrophage, and then let them come towards the tumor. After 24 hours, we see that yes, this is a very specific kind of calling, because only the activated monocyte, activated macrophages are infiltrating the tumor and making the tumor red. We can see here the M2 type, they are also getting called. So we can say here that this call, whatever the things that is this being exerted by this tumor, it is specific for M0 and M2. Okay, so this is another interesting point. We can see that the calling is there. The cell, whoever choose to answer that, they will come and then they will come towards the tumor and infiltrate it. So this is our tumor crosstalk study. So I have two PhD students. Sukarna is mostly working on the metastasis, and Abhishek is working on the crosstalk study. So these are the things that we need to answer, how we can answer them in future, what we can do furthermore. And to wrap up this, I want to thank our funding agencies. We have grants from DBT, DST, UGC, as well as from RUSA, and our university is also supporting us. This is our lab members, current lab members. And if you are interested in studying and ask other questions, or if you have any other things to know, you can find us in Pune. You can contact us, and we are also available in Twitter. So thank you for joining and listening to our talk and showing interest in our lab work. And now I can take the questions.
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Tuli. It was really a wonderful presentation. I really loved it, especially the confocal images.
Thank
The
you very much.
immunofluorescent images were so crisp and clear, like
yeah,
amazing.
because we are, that is our problem that we have, because you can see the 3D structure that is we are doing. It is most of the time it is problematic to do the imaging, and we can see very kind of what we can say obstacles in terms of staining, in terms of imaging them. But we are trying to solve the problem, and we are trying to go ahead with whatever we have.